Today we're going to talk about 4 principles that when you use them with 5 successful interactions with your loved one, you can have an 80% success rate in behavioral change. I'm Rob, and it's yes time. When I'm speaking with parents, the topic that regularly comes up is, I wish my kid had more motivation. I wish my loved one would just do the things that they're asked to do. And what it boils down to is, what is motivating them to take action? What's motivating to create behavioral change or to do something different than the behavior or activity that you want to see modified in their lives? Oftentimes what happens is we go right into the behavior and we say, okay, let's focus on the behavior, let's create a rule, or let's create some kind of a consequence that will create change. And that can work. It just doesn't work long term. And in 1983, a system called Motivational Interviewing, not even a system, it's more a way of being with people, was created that totally circumvents and creates a new approach to behavioral change. It's not even about the behaviors. It's more about learning how to communicate. As we've talked about in previous chapters, it's about love and connection. Having that deep bond that gives us the power to truly influence another person as they strive to figure out in their life what they want to do, and in helping them get to a place of healthy behavior. And that's exactly what motivational interviewing is about. Instead of telling people what to do, or fighting with them about a topic, or pushing our value system on them, even if that's what we know is best for them, motivational interviewing provides 4 steps that you can follow, that you as a parent, that you as a loved one can use, and do it super effectively. We see this all the time within the parents that come through our system. Learn how to dynamically change these conversations and these interactions with their loved ones and kids. It truly works, and it's implementable. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to go straight to the end to make a point, which is often what people want to do is lead with principle 4, which is self-efficacy. Often what we want to do is go straight to, I want my kids and loved ones to be self-reliant, self-sufficient, to make their own healthy decisions. And when we see things happening where they're not making healthy decisions, where they're making behavioral mistakes or whatever it might be, we want to try to force this upon them through rules or consequences or whatever it might be. And again, there's a place for rules, there's a place for consequences. We need to have structure in the lives of our family systems. Very important. Yet when we lead with that from a parenting perspective, the last thing that happens is they're becoming self-efficacious, which means essentially to become autonomous, to learn how to do things on their own, to think on their own, to act on their own, to make healthy decisions without someone else having to force them to do that, to get to that place where they're becoming self-sufficient and healthy decisions. And when a child or a loved one is involved in a behavior like an addiction or the repetitive defiance for something as simple as taking out the garbage, and we've never been able to get them to do that effectively or on time, we get in these ruts and we feel like it's impossible to ever see them get to that place. What motivational interviewing does is it helps us step back from step 4 and start focusing on the fundamental foundation of what motivates and inspires others to start creating change, which is step 1, to express empathy. I'm going to tell a story about my wife. We were running the other day and my daughter called. She was in charge of the younger kids, and one of the younger sisters was just laying around, wasn't participating in the responsibilities that she was supposed to. And my older daughter started feeling the responsibility of that. Oh, mom and dad are going to get home and things aren't going to be done, and I'm so frustrated. And she got frustrated and called my wife. She said, sister's not doing what she's supposed to be doing. I'm so frustrated. I don't know what to do. And my wife says, you know what to do, just deal with it. And that was basically the conversation. So She didn't lead with empathy, but she caught herself pretty immediately, and after she hung up, she said, okay, I gotta do that over. So she calls back our daughter and she says, okay, I need a do-over. I love that. She said, I need a do-over. And my daughter says, okay. And she said, what I meant to say was, I can understand how frustrating that is. And I'm sorry that I told you to just take care of it. I know that you're able to take care of things. I trust you, but I know how difficult that is. We'll be home in a little while. Worry about what you can get done, and then we'll see where your sister is. So she kind of stepped back and was empathetic. So showing that empathy is a way to connect and communicate from a foundation. And what happens is when we don't lead with empathy, what we're generally doing is disconnecting from any change to take place. So for example, let's go back to taking out the garbage. I can't believe that you didn't get the garbage out. Now look what's going to happen. We're going to have full garbage cans the whole week. That will not create behavioral change. It might work for 1 week or even 2 weeks, but over time, that old behavior is going to return. Versus if that kid comes and says, I hate taking out the garbage, and you lead with, yeah, there's nothing fun about that. I'm with you on this. And that's all you do. That will create in them a connection with you, which immediately will motivate them on some level. Not always an immediate behavioral change. Sometimes it takes up to 5 significant interactions like we talked about. And often it can take many, many more than that. When we're dealing with an addiction, a deep addiction, leading with empathy can take sometimes months, even up to years, before we create that deep connection with someone where they will finally start to move on to the next steps of change and influence that we have. Which brings up the second point. Learning to roll with resistance. You as a parent understand resistance as well as anybody else in this world. I understand resistance. I have kids. Trying to get kids to do things, trying to get kids to change behaviors, trying to get our loved ones, our spouses, our relatives, our coworkers to change behaviors can be excruciatingly difficult and painful at times. Rolling with resistance is another foundation of empathy. So here's an example of what rolling resistance is like. If a client came into my office with a drug addiction and we were to lead unempathetically, they would shut down and probably wouldn't come back. Or if they were forced to come back, and I've seen this happen with a number of interactions, if they're forced to come back where they don't feel empathized with, they'll just go through the motions and no change will take place, generally speaking. I've had clients come in that say, yeah, I went to a therapist, and it was like they were just talking at me. They were telling me things that I already knew, I already know I shouldn't be doing this, or I just didn't feel like they cared. And they didn't get anywhere with them, which is why immediately when we have a client come in, and what we teach parents to do is to establish that foundation of empathy. And when you do that, so when a client comes in and says, I don't want to stop smoking marijuana, or I don't want to stop drinking. I think my parents are lame, they're outdated, they don't know what it's like. They never went through this. If I was to say, well, they're right, immediately, boom, we've created a disconnect. If I say, yeah, that must be really difficult for you, even if I don't agree with them. They might not even agree with themselves, they're just stuck in a rut. But if I immediately empathize, then what often will happen is they will resist, to test the waters, so to say. Well, yeah, so, I think they should just let me smoke or drink. Well, okay, I can see why you'd think that. Yeah, so how do you think that's going to work out? So kind of roll with it. I don't necessarily need to agree with them or say, yeah, your parents should totally let you stay addicted to this unhealthy substance or material. That's not going to be effective either. But when we roll with resistance, inevitably what will happen is it will naturally over time, sometimes not the first interaction, sometimes not even by the 5th, but over time, and usually before the 5th interaction we have, they will start seeing discrepancy. So let's take that addiction, for example. Yeah, I'm so sick and tired of my parents grounding me every time something happens. Wow, so what you're telling me is that when you've been caught drinking or smoking or whatever that is, that you have a consequence. Yeah, and I hate it. I'm sick and tired of it. Wow, that's really interesting. And then instead of making it about them, well, if you just stopped, then you wouldn't have the consequences. Boom, I've just thrown this all away if I do that. But if I say something like, wow, that's interesting, that drug seems to get in the way of you getting what you want. What do you mean? Well, you want to hang out with your friends more, and that seems to be getting in the way. That really stinks. Well, yeah, but it's not the drugs problem. And then I go immediately back to rolling with resistance. Yeah, okay. So what is it about then? And then I'll go right back into empathizing with them and listening to them. Over time, they see more and more discrepancy in the behaviors because we've established trust and empathy. They know I'm not going to fight them. The minute I start fighting, because when we fight, when we resist, we've immediately lost the power to influence and the power to help create efficacious change. So the goal is to help them see that discrepancy in a gentle and a loving and a kind way. And again, this is one of those things where parents will say, well, that's easy. You're explaining this in, a short segment, but it's not that easy to do. And I'm with you on this. It sometimes is really difficult to do. I find myself as a parent having to go back and think through a transaction and sometimes go and apologize to my kids and try to make things right because I haven't rolled with resistance or I haven't expressed empathy. We will fail in these steps as parents and loved ones. It's inevitable. As we've talked about already, we are all part of the Parenting Failure Club. And we can either say, well, I can't do this, or we can pick ourselves up and move forward and try to do a little bit better. And even when we've done these things perfectly, there are going to be those times where kids are ultra resistant for months. And I've seen situations that breaks my heart, and I can understand the pain that can often come to parents when they've been empathizing, setting healthy boundaries, rolling with resistance, and children or loved ones still choose negative behaviors. But the thing is over time, and usually not that long, not years, but over a few months, sometimes even weeks, what we see happen is that as they feel empathized with and genuinely loved, they have a desire to start creating change. They start seeing. Where I've had clients that come in saying, I wish my parents would just watch the documentary on cannabis and marijuana and how awesome it is, to a few months later saying, I wish I could stop this. I can see how it's destroying me and it's ruling me and I can't stay focused on more than one thing and I don't know what to do. And then when they come to that point where they see the genuine discrepancy in their behaviors, then it puts us in a position of power. And that is a delicate place. And so here's a very important point I want to make. Anytime we go into the I told you so mode, we've lost. Because then that throws them right out of empathy and into shame. And they feel like garbage. An example is a young lady who just had that really unhealthy relationship with a boyfriend, for example. And the parents know it's unhealthy, and they've been pushing and trying to set boundaries and rules, but they're not following the rules, and then all of a sudden, everything falls apart. And they come to the parents heartbroken because this relationship has exploded. And the parent leads with, I told you so. How many times did I tell you that it was only going to lead to heartache? If you would have listened to me. Immediately, you've lost your power to teach and to develop efficacy. But if in that situation, as a parent and loved one, you say something like, wow, that must be really difficult. I'm here for you. How are we going to get you through this? I'm here as an ally. Then they are going to continue to come to you to seek advice. And then when they say, what should I do? If you tell them what to do, the likelihood is they're not going to do it still. This is where you have the power through that position of empathizing, of rolling with resistance, to where you can then help them develop self-efficacy. This isn't about mom efficacy. efficacy or dad efficacy or school teacher or leader efficacy. This is about self-efficacy, where you teach them the proverbial how to fish instead of throwing fish at them just because they're emotionally vulnerable to be taught. Well, I think it's time for you to do this, and then they go do it, or they don't do it. It's going to be short-lived. But in that case where the kid is going through school problems, and you help them, wow, this is going to be really hard, taking a summer class because you want to graduate, yet you failed your class. What are we going to do? Well, I guess I have to take the summer class. Yeah, how do you do that? Well, I don't know, can you get me signed up? I could do that for you, but I think it's a lot more effective if you go ahead and take the ball and roll with that. I'll help you find the number, and then they're in a position where your influence carries weight. They make the call, they set up their own summer class, they take the initiative. Well, I'm going to need a ride. Whoa, well, how can we work that out? And you can even help get them there. But if you're doing it for them, that's going to lead to more resistance, more issues, and more long-term problems. It's about teaching them through time to be self-efficacious and putting yourself in that position instead of trying to lead in that position. I'm your parent, you have to listen to me. No, they don't. And how often do they anyways, right? Yes, you are their parent, they don't have to listen to you. And how many kids have that selective hearing? How many of us, and you have that selective hearing at times, when we feel threatened, we go into selective hearing or we shut down. But when we feel loved, when we feel connected with, when we feel like people are being in this way with us, which is what we call motivational interviewing, then we tend to sit down and listen and to be taught and then to take our own initiative. When clients ask me, okay, I'm ready to change, what should I do? I don't tell them what to do, even if they beg me for it, because I've learned through this process that I have a pile of to-dos sitting in my office that I've presented to people that they've left in the office. But when they present their own solution, when they come up with their own plan, when they get to that point, I'm ready. Let's look at an extreme example. Someone who's so deeply addicted that one therapy session a week just isn't going to do the job, and they do need to go into a residential facility. When they come up with that idea, we had a client, multiple clients who have gotten to this point where they say, I need more help. I need to go into a facility. And then we help them do the research. We help them make that decision and move forward with that. That's when they start getting through and becoming that anomaly where success happens long term versus the high percentage of people that go to residential and come back and relapse within 6 months. A, because it wasn't about them, it was about someone pushing them to do that, and B, they didn't work within their family system oftentimes. So that's just kind of a tidbit. If someone is going to go into that deeper place of healing, it should always involve you as parents and the family system. Because you as parents, not me, not a church leader, not a school leader, not a coach, you as parents hold the greatest power in using motivational interviewing. You have that power. No one loves them more than you do. Perhaps a higher power that you believe in. But besides that, you love them the most, and you carry the greatest amount of influence in getting them to that place where they can become self-efficacious. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to go to our website and present those, and correlate and correspond and see what other parents are talking about so that you can get ideas and see the experiences they're going through. We're going to be producing other videos that will help give you examples of how to work through these things with your kids and your loved ones. And I want you to go ahead and take a few minutes and do some things for yourself and for someone else. So here are some simple actions that you can take to start implementing some of these things. First of all, for yourself, identify an area of your life where you can better roll with resistance. It might be that craving for ice cream or that interaction you're having with a child or a spouse or a family member, whatever it might be. Think of something that's creating quite a bit of resistance in your life. And then today or tomorrow, when those triggers come to you, just think, I'm going to roll with this. I'm going to roll with this, and instead of resist, I'm going to roll with it. Doesn't mean give in. Mom, just give me $10. All right, I'm rolling with resistance. Here's $10. No, that's not what we're saying. But being able to roll with it and say, yeah, of course you want $10. That kind of an emotion. Number two, with someone else, think of a relationship in your life or multiple relationships and look for an opportunity over the next 24 hours to express empathy. It could be a kid coming up and saying, I don't want to sweep the floor. Or it could be a teenager saying, I'm so sick of my job. Or it could be a spouse saying, you never want to spend time with me. Whatever it is, express empathy in that moment. Find an opportunity to express empathy. What's so frustrating about your work? I'm sorry. And even if you totally don't agree, because sometimes when someone's looking for empathy, it's illogical. And that's what makes this difficult sometimes in these assignments, is sometimes getting over that logical point of saying, if you just have a better attitude at work, you'd be happier. Well, yeah, of course. But what they're needing right now isn't that information. They're needing empathy. And then, of course, go onto our website, share your experiences, because we know that will help in this process. And then, as a reward, something really simple. Go find someone, spouse, kid, neighbor, give someone a hug. Just because. If they say, what was that for? Just say, well, just because. And let that emotion be part of how you empathize in your life. Again, thank you so much. We're looking forward to Module 8. It's going to be awesome. It's a lot of fun talking about how we can move through that resistance that happens in the fights and disengage from the fight in what we call learning to not fight with grizzly bears. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.